You're watching AM Live, People and Politics. Now we drill deeper to, of course, the discussion of the day. And we follow the happenings of yesterday, where the police arrested and detained National Super Alliance strategist David Ndii at the coast and eventually brought him to Nairobi for interrogation before eventually hauling him before a court to face charges of incitement to violence. The merits and demerits of that case will surely be canvassed in court. However, this incident opens a new battle, pitting the opposition NASA against the Jubilee administration. It is bad politics and fuels the persistent acrimony between the two coalitions, stalling any efforts towards rapprochement. First, the manner of the arrest and successive events were disastrous. The police literally pounced on Dr. Ndii when he was on holiday with his family and seized him in a manner most uncivilized. There was no search warrant. He was not told the reason for the arrest. The family was misled and kept in the dark about his whereabouts, and neither was he allowed access to his lawyers. Looked at comprehensively, the way the police service is conducting itself is becoming indefensible. It is fast regressing, borrowing all tools to deal with current challenges, oblivious of the fact that the ground has shifted. All the occasions it has dealt with the opposition figures, stopping their rallies, tear-gassing and brutalizing their supporters, and routinely denying this demonstrates a singular inability to change and blind obeisance to some external forces. And joining us this morning, of course, we have a panelist to take us through this particular discussion. And we have with us Dr. Otiende Amollo, who is a member of parliament from Rarieda. We have also with us Herman Manyora, who is a political commentator, a resident analyst. We have with us as well nominated Senator Isaac Mwaura. We have with us Jakoyo, who is a former deputy whip of the National Assembly and, of course, a member of parliament from Game. Also, we do have with us Kimani Wamatangi, who is a senator from Kiambu. Good morning, gentlemen. Morning. Right. First, I want to draw your attention to the editorial cartoon that has been drawn by Gado this morning in the Standard, which is on our smart screen for you to see that. And there you go, a bit tacky, but you can see it on your screen there. Looking at that particular editorial cartoon, and we'll begin with you, Dr. Otiende Amollo. You were at the DCI yesterday. I don't know if you met Dr. Ndii himself. What will be your reaction?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Debarl. I'm going to comment on that cartoon, but first because it's opening since we were here last week.
Yes.
You remember last week is when we were here and Senator Wamatangi was preparing to go for the swearing in.
Yes.
And we were preparing to go to Jacaranda grounds. And since then, two things have happened. Mm-hmm. One is that we were on our way to Jacaranda grounds, and we discovered, and this is where I sympathize and empathize with the residents of Nairobi, that their leadership, led by the governor, had deposited human filth and other, materials at the Jacaranda ground to prevent us from getting there, which is really sad because these are institutions that should keep the city clean. And the second thing that happened is that the police, being true to their nature, instead of facilitating us to get to Jacaranda and preventing, deaths and other things, were themselves the cause of death. And in the result, at least 7 people died, including 7-year-old Geoffrey Mutinda. I extend my condolences to the family. I extend my condolences to the people, because the police in Kenya have clearly become the reason for insecurity, which now brings me to that editorial cartoon. I think the story of David Ndii is symptomatic of where we have now come to. We have come to a situation where what is written in the Constitution, what is written in legislation, what is written in policy is irrelevant. And we are now operating at the whim of individuals. I think we've gone full circle. It is singularly clear that the police are lacking independence, they are non-professional, and it is regrettable that not only do they do that behind the scenes, they have the courage to come right before the cameras and say that. We've seen the illegal instructions issued by Koome all the time. We have seen the police spokesman in your own show here threatening members of parliament, and that is unfortunate. In that story and in that editorial cartoon, it demonstrates exactly where we are. You cannot follow up a man who made some statements of opinion in a political show. As you know, it was an opinion in a political show such as we are in now. And then follow him up on that account, because that is political expression. But secondly, if you are investigating any person and you've taken weeks, in this case about 3 months to investigate, there would be no reason to wait and pounce on him when he's with his wife and family at the coast for a private visit. Thirdly, you would have no reason to go and pounce on such a person in an hotel room and search the hotel without a search warrant. More importantly, what you'd be looking for in that hotel would be a mystery, because if you thought anybody has anything worth finding, then you'd probably get it in their office or in their houses. So in the result, you go and pounce on him. You say that you're taking him to Nyali police station. You don't take him there because his wife followed immediately, and Winnie Odinga, who also happened to be in the coast, also followed. You may not have known this, but even they were arrested for asking to see him, but they were immediately released when the media then exposed this. Then you take this man and travel with him almost 600 kilometers by road overnight, alone, in the company of about 6 armed officers who were stopping at every stage in the middle of forest. What was their intention? Can that be what we want this country to be? And then you bring him all the way, you take him to DCI, and when we discover that he was at DCI, we go there. Then you've restricted his access to a lawyer under Article 49 for almost 20 hours. But even when the lawyers now come, it becomes a matter of argument, as if it is not a right under Article 49. We eventually then, they allowed only 2 lawyers to see him, and the rest of us were also there, and we were engaging. And then you bring him to court. By the time you're bringing him to court, and one would have thought you finished your investigations and consulted with the DPP.
Yes.
It then turns out that you have just sent the file to the DPP. We were in court for 3 hours. He was in the court cells. We were liaising with him and in court. Even the magistrates were waiting. It turns out that whatever charges had been framed were incompetent. So the file is sent back to the same police. The courts don't know what to do. We end up going back from the court cells, now searching for any police station. Initially we were to go to Mudangari, we end up at Pangani. The most interesting thing is that as we are going from court to the police station, you'd have thought Dr. Ndii was the biggest terrorist to this country. Because this is a man who allegedly is being accused of incitement. But the presence of the police force is unbelievable. I think that David Ndii's story demonstrates that we have gone full circle. We are essentially in a police state.
All right, we're essentially in a police state. You think so, Herman Manyora? Looking at the Star, we have the headline, why top economist Ndii was arrested, and it says also that confidential police sources say NASA strategist has been under 24-hour surveillance and suspected he was planning meetings with outlawed Mombasa Republican Council. Could that be the rhyme and reason that maybe they clamped on him at the Leopard Beach, hotel?
I don't know, and Debarl, frankly speaking, I don't know how police work, and I don't pretend to know. But when I look at this cartoon, it reminds me of the books we used to read when we were in Form 1. James Hadley Chase, James Bond, such, I really don't know, but I'll just say one or two things. One, I think we do not seem to tire from wanting to soil the name of this country. David Ndii is not a village like Manyora. This is an international figure with connections, and is a very respected person internationally. If it was Manyora, you'll be okay. Now, you can imagine what the world is thinking about us when we do all these kind of things. You don't engage in this kind of shenanigans, really, without much that you are going to gain out of it. And yet, you soil the name of the country badly. The second thing is, I think those who advise the government have prepared a script. And if they listen to me, I would advise them against that script. I think the government seems decided that in order to deal with the NASA people and the so-called rebellion, if you wish. And in order that Ruto may secure 2022, one, you are hoping to intimidate people into silence by using like fear and threats and intimidation and all manner of things, and including brute force when people assemble. And I think that's a wrong script. I think there are better ways of dealing with anything, including rebellion. We live in times when you cannot use force to achieve much. In the final analysis, you not achieve much. Yeah, I think you will achieve very little, if anything. So I think I would advise the government and Jubilee in general, perhaps to seek better ways. Because even if I were the president, I wouldn't be comfortable with what NASA is doing. I will still have to deal with it. But all I'm urging them is to deal with ways which leave us at least with some measure of respect as a country. Yeah.
All right. Let's say from Isaac Mwaura, them clamping on Dr. Ndii's, searching his, of course, room at the Leopard Beach Resort, looking for laptops. Is there information they're seeking?
Well, I can't really speculate on what the police are investigating, because that would just be conjecture. And I think it's important for this to run its own course. I mean, David Ndii, actually, that is his pronouncement. You know, Ndii in Kikuyu means somebody who eats other people. Who eats other people? Ndii means eating up things. Yes, cannibal. that is what Ndii means. It's good for people to pronounce it properly. Ndii. Yeah. So, so I don't know really in this regard what is this all about. I wouldn't support any form of brutality, but I think there must be law and order in this country, and I personally don't want to over-amplify Debarl. I don't want to over-amplify. This is an arrest like any other. I think it is seen as some form of political contest, and you know, by the end of the day, let's just accept one thing: we must bring this political contest to a close. If you look at our newspapers, they are full of stories of how, you know, the economy has been hurting, and the most affected people are actually job seekers. We cannot continue having political contests for far too long, you know, and I think it's important that these so-called political advisors to know when to stop, because in my opinion, I think Raila Odinga has really tried. He tried a lot this time round. But as Governor Nok is on record as having said, it's time, sometimes it's good to know when you've lost a battle. It's time to move on. And, you know, this contestation is not really about necessarily the good about this country. Let's just face it. It's about competition for political power. And in that regard, what is at stake is a country. We already have a new president. He has been rightfully sworn in. The judiciary was present, the same judiciary that nullified the August 8th elections. I think if there are other ways of engaging, you know, politically, that is a right of everybody, because we are a country. However, Debarl, it is my honest opinion that we are politicking too much. I think we are overrating political positions. We are overrating the role of politics in this country. If we continue this way, I think we are really putting our country in jeopardy, because now this becomes a big story, and then we make it look like now in the NASA quarters, Ndii is going to look like a saint, you know, and of course in the Jubilee quarters like a villain. I think we must not move in that direction. Let the police do their work. Let Otiende Amollo and the other lawyers also defend Ndii, and then we move on and see what comes out of it. But I do not want to imagine that even we are coming here in the morning to discuss about the arrest of one individual, then the next is another, as if, you know, we are trying to perpetuate a certain narrative.
All right, what narrative are we perpetuating? Jakoyo.
First of all, let me say good morning.
Good morning, good to see you.
I've been absent for a long time.
Yes, welcome back.
I am on leave. So I come back to interesting surprises. it's like Jakoyo when you're away. Mwaura lost his brains. You know, really, I mean, that kind of talk when there is a crisis, first of all, it beats me. He calls him Ndii. I think that's somebody who eats man. He has eaten Jubilee because the path, he has stayed the path of reasoning, and he is going to eat them. You know, my understanding of what I see, you know, sitting away from politics, is that the Jubilee government is on a path of self-destruction. Because, you know, why would you go to a hotel room and touch panties of somebody's wife? Where would you go to Mombasa to arrest somebody, bring them to Nairobi and not charge them in a court of law? Who was the complainant? You know, as Mwaura tells Otiende to go and defend Ndii, who is the complainant? You know, this reckless talk, the Mwaura and many other Kenyans, all of us, we have come here because of we have arrived where we are today because of political agitation. Unfortunately, we are back where we left Kanu. It's not where Kanu left us. We are just back where we left Kanu. When Mwaura says that you must end politics, no, there is this flagrant talk about let's move on. It is very, very important for people with brains to know that people are not moving on, because people don't want to go back. Because moving on means moving back to what Kanu used to do. It is unfortunate that you would arrest David Ndii the same day the president has gone to see Matiba, who was tortured by the police. Look at Ken Matiba. Mzee Matiba is on his bed because he was tortured by rogue police, and that is why our political fathers have been agitating for decades for a new constitution. Look at that picture that the president is at the where the president is at the bedside of Ken Matiba. That is a product of police brutality, and how I wish Uhuru Kenyatta would know that the police are sabotaging him. They are sabotaging our future. We gave police independence. Why are they taking political instructions? Why are they doing it if it is not for sabotaging the country? I thought at this time Kenyans would have been talking about how to begin to build foundations for a nation. But what are we doing? We are breaking it. You know, there is always this say that if you want to break something, you don't need a fundi. And where we are, so many people would be glad to destroy it. For us, let me tell you, Uhuru is the president. He says he has a new president. Where I come from, I came from my home in Game last night. They say they don't recognize his presidency and take that seriously. If a section of the society say we don't care what you do, it doesn't matter how much killing you do, it doesn't matter how much arresting you do, you know, but I can tell you, the way I see it going, yes, it will never be the same like it was last year. Kenya will have to be reconfigured so that we all agree to live together, and I have said on this show, or sit down and agree on how to live separately. Because we hate each other so much, and the politicians, when you hear the kind of talk, when people say accept and move on, it's going to be impossible. It's going to be impossible to even attempt to put back the fabric of this society. Right. And this government is participating in destroying it further. But that kind of comment where we say that, yeah, we should sit down and discuss how to live separately if we cannot live together, is exactly why we have such scenarios of David Ndii being clamped down, because he's been also, a person who's been advancing this kind of reasoning that we should have cessation. The picture you have on the screen of Ken Matiba, they were tortured, that's why we are free to talk. Matiba was tortured, that's why we are free to talk. And for those people who are in government, the the tribalists who are teaching us so much hate against each other. I think that what happened to them when Nyaya was in power will never happen again. It is going to happen sooner than you think.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Kimani Wamatangi. Good morning.
Yeah, morning, Debarl. And let me also say good morning to our viewers this morning. Glad also to have Jakoyo back. You know, we've had a session that has been relatively calm without so much extremism. but and then he says he's on leave. So if he's talking like that when he's on leave, then you want to ask yourself, well, what will he be saying when he gets back to work? Well, Karibu Jakoyo, welcome back.
Asante.
And I want to assure you that we are ready for you, and the new mindset that I hear you have acquired out there. The last time we were here, you sounded a lot much more reasonable. Right now I'm surprised.
But you just keep killing my people. What do I do? You know, I'm killing me. All I have is dead bodies. What do you want me to do?
Let's
surprising.
Wamatangi finish.
But a few things, Debarl. First, I note, and I think every Kenyan notes, that that the charges against David Ndii, as Mwaura says, that's actually how the name is pronounced. The charges against him were withdrawn, or rather, the file was recalled by the DPP, and he instructed the file to be given to him, and pending further investigations, and after investigations have been carried out, then the DPP would give directions. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that, one, contrary to the view that's being portrayed, that there is a lot of intimidation or lawlessness or quote unquote dictatorial trend. That's not true, because why would, first, let us acknowledge that he was apprehended. After being apprehended, he has been taken to a court of law. If he was being questioned somewhere in a bush or in some unknown destination, and Otiende Amollo and Orengo had to go find him using GPRS, then they would be claiming that we have discovered something, that something was going to... He was arrested, and it was not at night. It was in full view, in daylight. So that tells you that the police could have been pursuing some evidence. And then now he is brought to the cells. And once he is brought there, he is taken to a court of law, and afterwards, on the instructions of the DPP, freed and given the right to enjoy, as my good friend Otiende Amollo says, he is given his right to freedom by being given a bond. Now, what does that tell you? Is that lawful? Or is that lawfulness? Yes. And what one would be saying, what I would be saying in person is this, that let that investigation be carried out. Let that evidence be brought forth. Then we can competitively or fully then digress on the matter, air our views with full knowledge that these are the details. Because, you see, if we take this trend whereby every time when the police want to ask a question, and there are some issues I think that we really must take very seriously. Some of the things that you hear being said, and I would want even to tell my own counterman, Ndii, because my word is that I hear he's from Kiambu. What really I would want to tell him, it is okay to hold a contrary view. Nobody has told him not to hold a contrary view. It is okay to support and pursue a different political persuasion. We are a democracy. But we all must be mindful that we are, as we have said before here, 45 million of us. And whatever view, whatever political persuasion you are pursuing, let it not be either portrayed or projected in such a way that it puts the freedom of others in jeopardy. And you see some of those things that, as you hear, Jakoyo here is now saying, I believe that is now home talk in your area, that let us live separately if we can't live together. This is the kind of talk that we must say as patriotic Kenyans that we cannot keep quiet about. You must say that unfortunately, those that we have thought, as they say, would be the liberators of the coming generations. That is the likes of politicians like Jakoyo, Midiwo, like Otiende Amollo, have certainly gone the full circle. Otiende Amollo talks about the full circle from the first assault on the non-democratic trends that we had in this country. We embraced that democracy. Now they have turned back on it, and they're now talking about separation. They're talking about going to live alone. That is the narrative, live alone in a sphere or in a land where they only talk to themselves and make their own laws and call things as they may want to see them fit. You know, I said here the last time, we have been one unitary state, one unitary nation. We had that discussion here with Otiende Amollo the last time, and I appreciate he cited some constitutional articles, and I reminded him also that we have Article 5, which defines the constitution that is Kenya, the territory that is Kenya.
Thank you.
And so let's also not shy away to tell and call things the way they are. I want lastly to support the view as held by my colleague here that we also must say that we have had enough politics for this time. There's been enough politics now. Can we turn the wheel? We don't eat and live and drink and you know, breathe politics every time. The political season that we had for elections is now over. We should relook at where we are going and address other concerns of other Kenyans.
Right, thank you. Yeah. And I want also to draw your attention to this editorial cartoon that is in the Star today, where Victor is saying that Jubilee making freedom of expression very, very expensive. This is what we have inside the Star today. And of course, you can see that tongue wagging out there, and it has a barcode. I leave it for you to decipher. But we have a panelist here also to tell us more about this particular editorial cartoon. And maybe we can see the pronouncements that we've had before from David Ndii that maybe led to what is happening right now. This is in the Star as well, just to quote a few of them and to run them by you. We had him saying last week that my friend Jakoyo, he was pro-government. He met his death in an accident. In Kaiseri, he was threatening us. He went before us. You will die when your day comes, not a day before, not a day later. Then he said, I cannot accept that I have become a victim of fear of another human being. If you are going to live in fear, you are allowing another human being to become a god. This is all from October the 7th. He said the following amendment of the Constitution as suggested. The people have the right to possess arms within their domicile for their safety and legitimate defense, borrowed from Mexican Constitution. And it goes on. I can also just show you the others that we have here as well. Maybe they've been leading up to what happened yesterday. Then still on the 7th of October, he said county governments have the right to raise militia for the defense of the Constitution. And then on 8th, that is August the 23rd, he said, in a society where legitimate political dissents are bad, inevitably people take up arms. People do not accept subjugation forever. The 3rd, that was March the 26th, 2016, he said, if Uhuru Kenyatta is declared winner in another sham election, this country will ban. And then he said, when people find that they cannot live together, they part company. Kenya is, for the most part, an abusive relationship. It is about time we start talking about ending it. And of course, those are drawn from some of the editorial or columns that, and his column in the Daily Nation, that he has made some of his statements as well. Let's wind up on this particular topic about the arrest of David Ndii, and we look ahead, because could this also be a precursor that now we're having the arrest, and we had also the Right Honorable Raila Odinga saying yesterday that we know more are going to be arrested as well. You still have your December 12th, swearing in of Right Honorable Raila Odinga. First of all, is a plan to swear Mr. Odinga and his running mate Kalonzo Musyoka as President and Deputy President respectively on October the 12th still firmly on? This is to you, Otiende Amollo. And given the wanton arrest that we're seeing right now, of course, of a chief strategist over the weekend, do you hold out any great optimism that this will materialize?
Thank you, Debarl.
Very briefly.
Okay. Let me wind up that David Ndii story. Two things that ought to be known. In the course of the interaction, it appeared that the police intended, and probably still intend, to charge David Ndii with 2 counts of incitement. The interesting thing is that one of those counts appears to be on account of a story ascribed to him which he did not write, and he had already tweeted this, I think some story from tuko.com or something like that, but which surprisingly the police wanted to ascribe to him. So we must be careful what is it that we ascribe as he having said at whatever point, because part of, and that I think happens to a lot of us, people then create some sort of, platform in your name and claim it is yours. Part of what the police must do is to establish the fake news from the real news, and to arrest those who generate fake news in your name.
Yes.
Having said that, I am worried when Senator Wamatangi and Isaac Mwaura seem to justify improper actions by the police. It is unfortunate because with the police, when you explain away their improper doings, there comes a time when it does not matter which side of the political divide you are on. They will deal with you because now they believe that is acceptable. What ought to happen, and even without going into those stories, the police do not always need to arrest you in order to charge you in court. And that needs to be known and established. It is perfectly proper for the police to investigate you, to invite you, even before summoning you, to invite you to attend the police station at a given time and day. If you don't come, then they can summon you. And they can tell you, just like happens with traffic offenses, that you report to court on 9th at 9, the Chief Magistrate Court, to answer charges. That seems to be lost somewhere. It is now becoming a new normal that you must be arrested and detained before you are presented in court. Secondly, it must be remembered that when the police is investigating a matter such as this,
yes,
and it's not a matter where they need to incarcerate you because you're about to destroy evidence or something,
yes,
it is perfectly okay for them to invite you and give you a police bond. In the case of David Ndii, you must ask yourself, how much did the police spend in sending 2 vehicles with 7 officers all the way to Diani and back in order to finally release him on 10,000 bond? How much money would we have saved if they had simply given him that bond of 10,000 and told him, we will invite you when we want to take you to court? And thirdly, it is the circumstances. Sometimes it's not about the arrest, it's not about the offense, but the circumstances of the arrest. When it reeks of malice, then you know it's not about the due process of the law. In this case, and that now brings me to the question that my friend spoke about. Is it time to bring the political contest to a close? I can tell you, as Jakoyo Midiwo was telling you, I also just came from Rarieda. This contest cannot come to a close because the people of Rarieda tell me, and they tell me in no unclear terms, that we did not participate in the election of Uhuru Kenyatta. We do not recognize him. As an elected member, there is no way I can tell them, I have now been advised by Wamatangi and Isaac Mwaura that the political contest has come to an end and therefore you must stop. They will not stop. If the people of Kiambu believe it has come to a stop, that is their right. But the people of Rarieda are entitled under the Constitution to believe that as long as electoral injustice has not been resolved, that will not stop. But in any event, for a politician, and Isaac Mwaura is one, we used to be with him on the human rights field before he crossed over fully, to diminish human rights. A politician practices politics. And the role of a politician, an elected politician, is threefold. One is legislation, the other is oversight, the third is representation. As long as your people are telling you certain things, then you must say them. And those things will be political. It is a contradiction in terms for a politician to say it is time to stop politics. Then that's the day you must resign. because that's where you are paid. We are paid to do politics. And the last issue is this. Even if David Ndii spoke of cessation, okay, is it criminal? First of all, you should note that so far as our engagement was, his incarceration is not around the question of discussion of cessation. Okay? But even if it was, I've said it and I repeat, there is nothing wrong with that under the law. We are allowed by Article 25, by Article 38, by Article 255 to examine the question, is Kenya's as a project working or not? And anybody who discusses that, there's nothing wrong with that. Article 38 1C is very clear. Everyone has a right to participate in a political party or a political cause. If you believe that is your cause, rightly or wrongly, you cannot be faulted for that.
Thank you. But since we
and this is to close it, therefore, in that respect, it is not a crime to discuss, to have a cause. If your cause is cessation, if your cause is electoral justice, if your cause is fairness in terms of this country, you will discuss it. And what I can tell you from where I sit is that you cannot force people and tell them now the political contest has come to an end. You must come to a situation where people accept by themselves that it has. As long as they don't, then it means there are certain fundamental issues that remain alive. And there's nothing you can do because it's in their hearts and it's in their minds.
All right, let's hear from Herman Manyora as we're closing on it very briefly.
You know, you've shown us and read some quotes from David Ndii. Is that proper?
Yeah.
Ndii, yes.
Ndii, yeah.
Yes.
You know, this kind of quotes and this thinking and the thinking they represent can make government uncomfortable. You know, government is made up of human beings whose flesh and blood like Mwaura here and Wamatangi. So I understand that they can be uncomfortable. Let's just accept it. and to underscore that, I want you to go back to the days of Jomo Kenyatta, Mtukufu Rais Jomo Kenyatta, Baba wa Taifa, and the days of Moi before multipartism. What would happen to you if you say half of those things that David Ndii said? Stuff would happen to you. You'd be lucky to be alive. I mean, like, look here. So they are uncomfortable things. Now, why I'm going back to the 60s is to remind those who are thinking like Wamatangi perhaps, is that you cannot deal with that in the year 2017 in the manner in which you led with it in the year 1975. Surely it cannot be the case. That can't work. So that brings me to what I said earlier. There are things that would make government uncomfortable. What I'm advising government to do is to find better ways of dealing with them. Not using outdated methods that anyway won't work. You get it, Debarl? Mm-hmm. And finally, I want to say this. There are simple ways of solving our problems. This is something I've been saying on some discussion panels, and people have not agreed with me. Our problem is simple. But history has shown us men have always refused to go the narrow path, the straight, simple, common sense kind of approach to things. The consequences have always been war, bloodshed. But at the end of the day, history will tell you, Debarl, any contest that became brutal, where lives were lost in millions and hundreds of thousands, men finally came back to do that which they ought to have done initially, which is sit down and talk. So it is only fair for this country to sit down and talk, and not wait to talk when a lot of harm has been occasioned to the country. This is my argument. So people like Ndii will be there. Like Raila Odinga said yesterday, there are going to be more arrests. There's going to be more brutality.
Right.
But the best thing to do is to avoid all that by appreciating that it is within our means to sort out this problem.
Right.
And not by telling people to move on. Because then there you get it wrong. People will move on at some point, but after some little harm.
Right.
Wamatangi.
Okay. And the question I'd posed to Dr. Otiende was this: could this also arrest that we're seeing right now, beginning with David Ndii, as you're putting it, is it a precursor that come December the 12th, yes, because we've heard from other quarters, oh, there's going to be a house arrest, that Right Honorable Raila Odinga is going to be under house arrest that particular day. So is this to just prepare maybe the psyche of the country, to warm up to the idea that the arrest can happen?
If what we have been going through in the past few months is anything to go by, then even 1990 will look like a picnic. I can see it. And that is why I have urged in one of the videos I produced on my YouTube channel, let us suspend this swearing in. I can see a lot of damage in this country. I can see a lot of harm occasioned to people. I really urge Otiende Amollo and Raila Odinga and the NASA Brigade, forget about this swearing in. I can see destruction never before seen in this country. So I'm not saying because I don't fear things really. I'm not one of those guys who fear. But I'm only being reasonable and saying, are there no better ways of doing this thing? Let's do it in another way. Because these guys, and I'm calling these guys because they are these guys. You've seen what happened today and the cartoon, are determined to force their way through. And in the process, many people suffer.
Thank you. Let's hear from Isaac Mwaura.
I think just to put this matter into perspective, and by the way, we know Otiende Amollo, as he has rightly said, we have been with him in human rights work for many years. It's just that I also realize that rights also have responsibilities, and I think it's good to be responsible. I see a situation where, you know, David Ndii, if you track him, he comes across before, not now, as a very impressionable economist, you know, and with very good ideas that are left-wing oriented in terms of political ideology. But then you see a David Ndii that morphs into a radical and idealizes, you know, left-wing, you know, kind of utopia. So much so that then he sees that this struggle is embodied in a certain political, you know, coalition, in this case NASA. But I really want to advise him that we have walked that road before ourselves. And we realized that political ideologies in this country only end up to being personal because of our body politics. And they just become some mirage, some kind of posture for political contest, other than actual pursuit of real, you know, change through such ideologies. That's the truth of our Kenyan politics. And why do I say so? Because when you look at the people who follow such inclinations, it just ends up being tribal conglomeration of people. So I don't know whether Ndii wa Wangari will also devolve where or secede to where, because I think he comes from Limuru. You know, I remember in his article once he said, like a two-man, like let's dismember ourselves. And just also to say that we need each other as a country. I mean, this idea of, you know, chest thumping and saying, oh, you go to hell, oh, we don't need you, oh, you know, we can survive or not, is not true. We need one another. And that realization has to happen, because for me, what I see, to the contrary, I think people are trying to establish facts on the ground, you know, in anticipation for some political dialogue. So you can see that, because if you know very well that swearing yourself in, I don't know against what results, against what law is treasonable, then how then do you set yourself up for that? And Raila Odinga must also realize that he has been held captive by certain individuals who have got their own political agenda. And that must be said here on national television, so that he also must not be said. When you are talking about people, you don't tell people, let's keep on moving. No matter what happens, we must move forward. Hii ni Kenya yetu. You know, that kind of thing. You must also realize when to stop. You know, when to stop as a statesman. You know, in the same vein, and I think I must credit His Excellency the President, in the same vein, he refused to sign the election amendment laws, which us in Parliament were just stamping and saying they must go through. In the same vein, Raila Odinga must also sit alone and say, what is the best interest for this country? Because after all is said and done, the records will show, I mean, what decisions were you able to make at a certain point in time? And I would want to imagine, in my opinion, Debarl, that it's good to give credit where it is due, that in terms of his pursuit to become the president of this republic, it is not in doubt that he has done what is best. But now, if you come to a situation where He swears himself in. Of course, he will not go to State House. I think he will go back to his house. What does that amount to? Besigye tried it. It didn't work. Tshisekedi in Congo tried it. It didn't work. In the same way that we opined in the past that even for him to withdraw, which essentially became a boycott, would not have helped him. He became by this number 2, 70,000 votes, would not have helped his cause in the same way that this, purported swearing in will not help. And I think I agree with Professor Manyora here, that let us not try to take this country to some form of head-on collision, just like we are going for a political expedition.
Thank you.
It's good and it's important as statesmen, and I think in this case I would want to add that reason prevail for the sake of this country.
But as a statement, as you're putting it, that the president actually did a very salutary effort in trying not to really assent to that particular bill. He, from our own perception, is that he actually spoke from both sides of his mouth. He said that the electoral laws are not good, yet he did not take back the electoral laws to Parliament. And he waited for the 14-day window period for it to be effected naturally by the Constitution. So if the president actually was proffering a very good and posturing a good statesmanship then, why didn't he take back the electoral laws back to Parliament? Yeah,
it's good to understand how it happens. Is that if he had taken back the law to Parliament, it would have meant that we have to veto him by over 2/3. Obviously, which of course would not have happened. I don't even think, based on the political prevailing circumstances, it would have been like a prolongation of the same debate. I think that is on record. He did not sign. If he really wanted, he would have given his own opinion on that law.
If the debate it seems to be very chancy for the country as election law, why can't you know? Why don't you just give it a handy opportunity to prolong the debate for the sake of having good electoral laws?
No, I don't think so. Personally, I think now the matter is before the courts. I think David Ndii has gone to court and other people. The court will determine whether those laws are constitutional. And I think the president, in his faith, in good faith, he said, as a contestant, as a candidate in the elections, he couldn't even have opined over that, because even if he had engaged himself in that debate, then he would have been expressing his own opinion as a candidate. And I think that's the best thing that he did was ever not to do anything about those laws.
All right. Let's hear from Jakoyo Midiwo.
It's interesting how Mwaura has been there for, this is his 6th year and does not understand how it works. I saw the president saying that he did not sign it. Why didn't he reject it, knowing that the consequence of not signing it means it becomes law?
Yeah, he said because he doesn't agree with it.
If you are the president and you don't agree with it, it's on your desk, reject. That is the power of the presidency. That's simply what it means. Mwaura, please. We are on national television. Number 2, Professor Manyora, about this.
Wamanyora.
Wamanyora.
Some would call me
Wamanyora.
It's an inside joke.
Mwaura is thinking is wrong.
Okay. But anyway, let me just tell my good prof here, this issue about swearing in, you cannot talk of talking to avert the extreme feeling of exclusion and at the same time saying suspend. This country is already divided. There is no amount of bullet pumping that will keep us together. We are free and we feel different. We don't like each other. We must agree on the rules of staying together. I was very happy when I had Wamatangi and his ilk saying the president needs to leave a legacy. They don't talk about a good legacy, a legacy. But what do you remember Hitler by? What do you remember Idi Amin by? What do you remember Mugabe to have been? He just left the other day. Is there anything to say about them? If I was Uhuru Kenyatta, I would see that the amount of lawlessness that the Jubilee government is espousing will have him join that list many years from now. Because you cannot, the day the president took the Bible at Kasarani, it's the same day a 6-year-old kid was killed by the police. The oath says you protect our lives. At what point does the politicians order police to kill when you are swearing in to protect? This really, I'm pleading with the president. It is simple, but I am telling you where it has gone. The legacy that they're talking about, they're not saying good or bad, is headed in the direction of how we remember Hitler. Number two, the police have a problem. You know, to blame the police where they are sent by the politician is not 100% correct. Remember, the same police force killed our people in 2007. There was never any therapy. Nobody kills and without proper therapy comes back to normal. They're the same force. Even the leadership of the police today are the same people who, some of them are in the political class. I saw Mbugwa is now touted to be something in State House, the former governor of Nakuru. He was the head of AP. Those APs are still in the force. What have we done as a country to reform the police force? What was the whole idea about reforming the police force? I think instead of even just talking about David Ndii, because I'm not sure you can scare him, much like you can't scare me, much like I know for sure you will not scare Raila Odinga, I think we need to say the other side have their view, this other side has their view.
Thank you.
Put Kenyans together. Put Kenyans together and let us agree on laws that don't make us uncomfortable. What you are seeing is a result of us as a country, and particularly the political class, refusing to reform the police the way it was envisaged under the new constitution. I did suggest that under the first independent police force, let us get somebody from the Scotland Yard to take all these policemen to Kiganju. The state instead said, vet them. We were asking policemen, how much money do you have in your account? As if that is any vetting. The new constitution was meant to make Kenyans all begin a new life.
Right. Let's hear from Kimani Wamatangi briefly as we're winding up on this.
Yeah, Debarl, just first a quick comment on the process of lawmaking, because I think it's important to be clear over those comments that that were made by my colleagues and yourself on the law that was passed, that actually passed on account of the 14 days having expired. In that process, what the Constitution recognizes as a process of making law is once Parliament, and that is in respect of the separation of powers of the three arms of government, that once Parliament has sat and gone through its process to propose a law and then send it to the President for assent, then he has three options. He can either assent to the law, he can fail to assent to it, then consequences that ensued on this one do ensue, or he may refer the law back to Parliament with his reservations. That is that's what should happen, and you'll find that because of the protection of the powers of the three houses, he does not have the power to take a pen and cancel a law with one stroke and say it does not exist. He may refer it back to Parliament with the reservations that he has on that particular law. Which will have been a viable option. In this particular process, and I think that's really what is noteworthy, and those comments he made very clearly when we were in Bomas of Kenya, that at that time he was a candidate in the election, and meddling in that law in any way would have been perceived to give him undue advantage, and that is why it was left the way it is. But for all practical purposes, for that law to be either good or better, there are so many avenues which are still open. And I think NASA had pronounced itself very, very clearly. Even in the process, during that process, they had said very clearly that they already have their papers to court already. And so any amendments they may want to have in that now can find their day in court. And that's how it should be. Now, I wanted to make a very quick remark on the other issues. Debarl, sometimes when, at the fall of communism in the former Soviet Union, the last president, when Boris Yeltsin took over, and then succeeded by Putin, Vladimir Putin. At one time, Putin, in battling then what the consequences of the fall of communism were and embracing democracy, had an opportunity to meet George Bush, then the president of the US, and they had a big issue. Bush came with a lot of edits on how do you deal with your people. You should not suppress the press, you should not. But, when they went to discuss on the question of rights, and especially the right of expression, I think I would say I admired, and we are at one point where now, the comment that was made by Putin, he told Bush, I think the difference is that we interpret and see this in two different ways. And this is where we are as a country, and this is what we should be talking about. Because, you see, this matter we are calling the freedom of expression, as enshrined in our Constitution, is a real big issue that we must deal with decisively, so that we can, as leaders, show the way as to how does the common person on the street interpret when he hears Otiende Amollo, a renowned lawyer, or Jakoyo Midiwo, a legislator of such repute. Now, bundle all these other freedoms together and rights of other individuals, and put it on in one basket called freedom of expression, and anybody can say anything. And let me say this. I'm glad at least you read some of those comments as made there by David Ndii, and you'd want to ask yourself, really, dispassionately, without favor, would those be comments when you say that county governments have got a right to organize their own militias if this and this happen? When you say that citizens in Kenya have a right to arm themselves, what are you saying? Though you may have that right to express and say those things, are you using that right for the better of the country, or upholding and even expanding the other rights as far as they're enjoyed by the other individuals? And that's what I'm saying. That you see, and I want to finalize with this because it has been spoken over twice now by Otiende Amollo on this question of moving on, and Jakoyo also picked on it, that we are not going to move on. We don't recognize that an election was held and a president won the election and so on. And also give them their burden to carry, and especially that one of responsibility. Jakoyo Midiwo, Otiende Amollo has said in this particular platform many times that he is actually one of those who wrote this constitution that we have. And this constitution is about ensuring that our democracy, and underline that word, our democracy. And what is democracy all about? Debarl, democracy is about I and you and all of them going into a fair competition and being prepared as we go to that competition, that if you lose that competition, that you are willing to accept the results, and whether you like it or not, move on. Not you only, but facilitate and allow that the country moves on. That is how you practice democracy. But when it does not favor them, and fair is a very subjective word. It's liberal. I mean, you can interpret it in whichever way you like. I mean, because it's a question of perception. I mean, Debarl, if you say Wamatangi, stop speaking now, I'll tell you you're not fair. But you could be fair in his perception. What fairness are we talking about?
The Constitution gives
you
the principles.
The only fairness you can attribute to an electoral process is its lawfulness. Has it followed the steps strictly enshrined in the law? Has those steps been followed? If they have been followed, then every other aspect, or many other aspects, right, that we can talk about fairness would be according to your own perception. Right. So let me just make a quick one as I finalize on this, because I think this is the crux of what I wanted to say. That unless we politicians, from both sides of the divide, and especially leaning towards the side of NASA, are willing and ready to take up the responsibility that we undertake when we swear to our offices, when we take that oath, that we will lead this country and we be true to the Constitution and be true to the nation. That is the time when we are going to have lesser of these problems. Otherwise, as long as we can play from both sides, and then you find that when you come to the show, when you go to your village in Rarieda, as Otiende Amollo says, as Jakoyo says, when he goes back to his native game, that time he's a local politician. He's the leader of the Luo. Now, when he comes to the national platform, he's a national leader, and he can profess the Constitution and articulate democracy. And when he's there, he wants to play the village politics to remain relevant. Now, when that cocktail, when those two are mixed and brought to the fore, to be the food we serve on the table of Kenyans to partake and expect a better tomorrow, it cannot happen. And so, who carries the responsibility? Who should be called to order? It is the politicians. It is us.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
All right, we bring it to a close with you, Dr. Otiende. First of all, you are one of the drafters of this constitution, and we expect you to be the custodian of this constitution, as it's being alluded to by Kimani Wamatangi here. Going full steam ahead with this particular swearing in on the December the 12th, you are fully aware it is treasonable, isn't it? Are you going full steam ahead with it because you know this will be another illusory dream that will never really come to reality? How would you advise Honorable Raila Odinga, you as a legal mind who drafted this constitution?
Well, first of all, Debarl, I heard Isaac Mwaura advising Raila Odinga. I doubt if Raila would take Mwaura's advice for obvious reasons. Mwaura is one person.
But Mwaura has been in that camp before. Yeah?
Precisely for that, because Mwaura is a man who benefited from the generosity of Raila Odinga. When he had the opportunity to nominate somebody to parliament, he did not look at the tribe, he did not look at anything else. And as soon as he benefited, while there, he then discovered how evil Raila was and has spent a lot of time, you know, demonizing Raila. I mean, even if it was me, I would definitely, and I would warn even those who have now nominated him now, I mean, he can turn on you anytime. I would not take his advice. Number two.
I like that.
Number two, there is nothing unconstitutional, there is nothing unlawful, there is nothing wrong with the People's Assembly. That should be very clear. Beyond that, I will not speak for the committee. You know there's a committee that is arranging all those People's Assembly as to whether, where, and how. That is for the committee. I will not go into that. But allow me to say two things. One is that you can never deal with feelings of exclusion, feelings challenging your legitimacy by threats, deaths, intimidation, or maiming.
Right,
that does not, because that will actually, that will only enhance those feelings.
For my understanding as well, and I think for many Kenyans, because I do not really understand, the People's Assembly vis-a-vis the Constitution and the swearing in. This is where now we do not get the clarity. If Kenyans really get the clarity through...
Listen to me very carefully. Yeah. You want me to make the clarity of how we will do it. I am telling you, yes. I will not. First, because I'm not in the committee. In any event, for those who want the clarity, just wait and see. Let the day come, then you will see how it is done. It is not for me to sit here and start saying how it will be done. I am not in the committee. There is a committee that is organizing the People's Assembly. And this will not be
in any violation of a constitution.
That is organizing the People's... I have told you there is nothing unlawful about the People's Assembly. So I will leave that at that.
But I'm pressing for specifics with the swearing in. I'm not really talking about the People's Assembly.
Debarl, I am not in the committee. So you will have to wait for the committee to come here or get Lee to deal with that.
All right, thank you.
But the point is this. The point is, if anybody in government or in police think that the way to diminish this is by threats, intimidations, arrest and all that, that instead of, causing what Professor Manyora wants, it actually heightens it. And I can tell you, the people out there are so charged. I was in Kakamega 2 days ago. It is unbelievable. They are ready, you know. So I will leave that at that. But what I want to say is this. It's two things. freedom of expression cannot be subjected to the way Wamatangi is now questioning it. I mean, we are in a situation where through the Jubilee administration, the freedom of assembly has essentially been negated. The equity in terms of employment opportunity has been diminished. The idea of fair elections has been diminished. And now they are on the fourth pedestal, freedom of expression. You know, once they get there, then we are done. I mean, the Constitution of 2010 is as good as dusted, I can tell you that for sure. It is not the question as phrased by Wamatangi. Wamatangi phrases the right question and comes to the right conclusion. He says that democracy demands that if you go into an election and you participate in that election, and that election is fair, you must accept the outcome. But forget that that exactly is the opposite of what happened. Because when Raila and NASA raised all the issues of concern, Jubilee ran roughshod over them. When the electoral contest became delicate, they passed some legislation that made it impossible for the Supreme Court to nullify the elections. And then Isaac Mwaura and Senator Wamatangi sit here with a straight face and try to persuade us that President Kenyatta acted in good faith by honestly believing those laws were improper and therefore didn't sign them. I was here when I told you that President Kenyatta was being dishonest because he knew, and on that day we were speaking was the 14th day. He knew that by default of law, that law was becoming law. And he knew that it would advantage him when there's a contest in the Supreme Court. Now that that contest has come to pass and it could not be nullified, Isaac Mwaura and Senator Wamatangi can say the court can now examine whether that law was lawful. How will it examine? And the Supreme Court already applied that law in the Supreme Court contest. So when you do not participate in that election because there is unfairness, then you cannot be expected to accept the outcome. So the answer that Senator Wamatangi seeks is exactly what he said. Because of the intransigence of IEBC, of the Jubilee administration, Raila Odinga did not participate in the elections of 26. And therefore you cannot use any of those provisions to ask him that democracy now demands that you accept. Right, that is the bottom line.
Thank you. Professor Amollo.
I think you've asked my good friend Otiende Amollo to talk about swearing. He's scattered around it. You know, these are politicians. I'm the only one. You and I are not politicians. He's going around it. But he has said something that has made me stand up and wish to say something. He says he was in Kakamega, and the people are charged and they are ready for it. Please go to YouTube and check Herman Manyora and the video I've talked about. And I'm saying precisely because of that, that I'm warning against this swearing in that video. NASA people have told me, we thought you were a friend, what is this? I'm saying this because I come from Vihiga County, Debarl. Vihiga County is the most religious, the most God-fearing, the most pro-government of the Luya communities. I would dare say they are even docile. When I see Vihiga people reacting the way they are reacting, chasing IEBC officials from training, chasing, closing shops and wanting to ban property, I say, God, where is this country headed? That is a barometer. And therefore, precisely because many people are charged and they are willing to attend this swearing in, I fear for the loss of life that may ensue. And for that reason, I appeal for caution.
Appeal for caution.
Caution, yeah.
No, we need to wind up on that. And given the spate of reactions that we've seen recently, and also the arrest of David Ndii, you know, the police stray bullets killing, you know, a young boy, 7-year-old boy.
Mutinda, yeah.
Yes, Geoffrey Mutinda. And all this flurry of activities that we've seen recently, should the government be also all the wiser right now, not try and actually fuel an already, you know, a tinderbox which is just already happening?
That's the argument I'm advancing. I'm saying this. There is a script government is using. That look here, there are going to be reactions about these things and against the Jubilee victory. What do you do about it? They hope and pray that naturally, through the stages of grief, this thing will come to a closure and the people will move. That people are pained And at some point, they will get over it.
Yes.
In the event they don't, or they organize certain activities, or say certain things such as David Ndii is saying, then we shall use force, and this will work for us. I am advising government this is not workable. There are better ways of doing this. And I'm also advising Mwaura and Wamatangi, who are my very good friends, especially Wamatangi. Mwaura, I see him where we have not met. This. And this is a fundamental mistake many people are making in this country. Yes. That this is an ordinary electoral contest, and the usual bitterness that go with an election and the loss, that when people lose an election, there's some divisions. For some time, people come back together as one. There is pain which eases out at some point, and we move on. This is different, Wamatangi. I've said this before. It is different. For the first time in this country, issues of legitimacy are being raised. There is a significant section of this country. Last time I said 2/3. People thought I was talking about mathematical 2/3 or mathematical half. No, I only mean a significant portion of the country, too significant to be ignored, are saying we are not recognizing the government as currently constituted. And this is not good for any country. You get it?
Thank you.
Therefore, we must not take the Raila thing as a normal loss. And therefore, government must be a little more tactful in dealing with it.
All right.
Yeah,
maybe just to get closing remarks on that, then we just touch on one or two things, then we wind up. Let's hear from Isaac Mwaura, very briefly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Debarl. I think every time I come to a show and I have panelists from NASA, they keep on bemoaning the fact that I left ODM. And I think I just need to, for purposes of the record, again to reiterate that when a divorce has happened, please accept and move on. Let's not keep on belaboring the point.
Look for another partner.
Another partner and move on. And but you see, Otiende, I actually did the graceful thing to go and tell Raila Odinga, honorably that I moved. And by the way, contrary to public opinion, I don't think we don't see eye to eye. And he would respect my opinion because it is honest. However, I think also, like father, like son, if you like, one of the persons who have changed most of the political parties in this country is one Raila Odinga. We respect him for that, from NDP all the way. But also, it's good to give credit where it is due. That Isaac Mwaura is very smart politically because he was first nominated by an Odinga and then the second time by a Kenyatta. Don't you think that is the political dynasty of this country? But going forward, in the same spirit, we may argue here and say everything. By the end of the day, I still want to insist, and I'm sure Senator Wamatangi will agree with me, and our erstwhile de facto leader of the opposition. And by the way, Jakoyo, we miss you in Parliament. I really hope the people of GEM can make a decision. Contrary to my expectation, I really thought you should be in Parliament. But anyway, that is something that is beyond us. We cannot continue with this contest because we are all going to lose as a country. At the end of the day, reason must prevail. I may come here and present a Jubilee side, because that's what I'm supposed to do. Otiende may do the same. But by the end of the day, let us not pretend. The people I really mourn for, Debarl, are people who are in mixed marriages. And there are many. A Kikuyu married to a Luo and vice versa. And other communities. I don't know what is going in their mind. Because deep within, much as we say, we may hate each other here, because we are fighting for who to be president. But Kenyans, deep within, I don't think that hatred, yes, is augmented by politics, but it is not insurmountable.
Thank you.
I want to be an optimist, personally, that let it be, there are some issues that I have said, even on this show, that we need to look at. Personally, I honestly think that with the kind of country we have, Debarl, and Otiende is here. Again, I go back to you because you are in the committee of experts and I was in the reference group. The presidential system where you have only two key positions is not working for this country.
Right. I think that's for another day. Okay. That's for another day. Let's hear from Jakoyo.
I wish you had allowed me to.
No, I think Muzungu has said he's smart. I agree with him. Mm-hmm. He is my friend, but where his last contribution is actually very good, because I think it tends to talk to the future, and Mwaura, that I like. I think we must move this country forward. Debarl, when Wamatangi talks about Ndii's quotes. Wamatangi is well read. Ask him to read, or I do ask him to read, the activities of Louis Farrakhan in America. And if he has ever been arrested for expressing himself. It is just that simple. Then ask him not to read, just listen to Moses Kuria. Do you think those things Moses Kuria, kill Raila, do this, do that, are worse than those things David Ndii has said? Moses Kuria, I'm just giving you one example. You see, we are in one country where the contradictions make the law not matter anymore. In fact, last week when I saw Matiang'i declare a public holiday, and yet the holidays are spelled out in the Constitution, we passed where a minister can declare a public holiday. In fact, he did it one day to stop the Supreme Court from working. That means the Constitution has been suspended. That is a sad thing. But since the law does not matter anymore, I would wish that we think about what Mwaura is saying. What is happening in communities, not only in marriages. I live in Kisumu generally nowadays. There is not a single Kikuyu business going on. The people, they run the economy. But because of the actions of the chauvinists, they all have left. I have an employee, Wanjiku. Every time there's a riot, she disappears, and nobody harms her. I told her, I thought you should be safer with me. She said, I can be safer with you at work, but I cannot be safer with you where I live. That is my fear. You know, those are things Uhuru took the Bible to sort out from 2013. Now, if we wanted to move forward, you would not have a president praising police for doing good work for killing people. That is wrong, because it hurts people who have been, in fact, when he's doing it, 28 people had just been killed. What are you telling Kenyans? What is your responsibility as the president? My last take is to the police. Let me just advise Boynet. You know, it may happen, but I see people, grandchildren of people who killed people for Hitler being tried today. I saw Milosevic, even this one's of Serbia. You saw one taking poison in court last week.
Bosnia.
Bosnia. Let me just tell you, I watched the last 2 days the FBI in America telling Trump off. Police tell politicians off. Tell Uhuru and Ruto off. Tell them not to send you to kill the people you're supposed to take care of. Please, take care of us. Stop mixing with Mungiki. Just stay with the law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kimani Wamatangi.
Debarl, I think I'll be brief on this one, because I just want to probably comment on one issue, the one that has been spoken to by Jakoyo, and it's a question you kept on persistently asking Otiende Amollo on this swearing in issue. I don't know whether, Debarl, you are a member of the drama club in your school. Were you? If you are not a member of the drama club, then you missed a lot. because I mean, but even if you are not, then in this station, remember, this was a station that came up with one of the most prominent drama shows, Ridiculous. And remember, we used to entertain ourselves in the evening, and including now a young man who is prominent in leadership, and others, including Churchill, who used to imitate President Moi and how he talks and whatever. And what I'm saying is this. You see, to talk about or even to imagine all this story you are hearing about swearing in and whatever, the writer or one of the writers of the Constitution as to how a president is sworn in is sitting right there next to you, Otiende Amollo. He has confessed that. He wrote that Constitution together with the other experts. He knows how presidents are sworn in. He already now he can tell you. That's why you have asked that question. He cannot go to it, because in his conviction of convictions, he knows that the swearing in of the head of state has happened. And the rest is just drama. So what happens if Dida also says he wants to be sworn in? What happens when Nyaga says he would also want to be sworn in. What would happen when Mwaura and all those other fellows say they would want to be sworn in?
They didn't win the elections.
You
Why
see,
would they ask? They never won the elections.
What you are just about, if it happens anyway, if it happens, what you will be about to witness is just another replay of street drama. As much as you can go to any school now, most of the high schools, where young boys and young girls may be playing out to scenes of how a swearing in can happen, and you cannot go and take it seriously.
Thank you.
Any person who at this particular time does not know Debarl, and I'm saying this on TV this morning, anybody who would tell you that they cannot feel the heartbeat of the nation, that the country has exhaled and is ready to move on, and it does not matter from which ethnic group or tribe or community you come from. If you go to any part of this country, those people who are serious about moving us forward, you will see there is new life, there is excitement. People want to get back to work. People want to go on with their normal life. Nobody wants to be held at ransom or captive again by politicians.
We need to wind up.